All right, we've got a lot to get to today, and want to give it a couple of days to breathe for this episode of Carps Corner. Just right after the game, things can be emotional. People say some things that are a little crazy, a little outlandish. I always try to pride myself on being measured, being balanced, and understanding that you know what things are rarely as good as they seem, and things are rarely as bad as they seem, and generally somewhere in the middle, reality lies. But obviously not a good feeling Sunday night or Saturday night, Sunday morning. That wear off, rewatch a little bit, start looking into the numbers a little bit, and try to figure everything out and try to identify what happened and then why it happened. And I think we can kind of look and kind of see what happened. There's been some mischaracterizations of it, especially on Monday. A little Tuesday as well. Just saying, the game was just like last year, which I don't believe was the case. The game was not like last year. All right. And so we've got some Ryan Day sound to get to. We've got some graphics and stuff I want to throw up. But first I'm going to get to this. Like the game was not like last year at all in terms of score, final score. Yeah, there were some similarities with it. Last season, Michigan was able to big boy Ohio State up and down the field on defense. They ran on Ohio State at will. The defense could not stop them. And then offensively, they got pressure all over CJ. And despite how good the wide receivers were and the ability to make plays down the field, still struggled. And that was going to be an issue, with it. So, when you get beat like you did, like the manner that you did in a game of that magnitude, yeah, it's going to sting. There's going to be some issues with it all, and it's not going to feel good. But the reason why Ohio State lost wasn't because they got beat up and down the field on the offense and defensive lines, which is what happened last year. It wasn't a toughness thing. You're going to look at the end of this and say, yeah, look at all the yards that they had running the ball, look, missed tackles, things like that. All right. Here's what happened. I mean, in big moments, plays were not made. That's the reality of it. If you look and go watch the line of scrimmage, first three quarters, and even on the long touchdown runs, there's not a significant amount of movement, if at all, by Michigan. Ohio State ran the ball pretty well. Chip Trainum, I thought, did a pretty good job. Xavier Johnson did a pretty good job. Mayan did okay. I mean, battling through some stuff. Dallin didn't get a lot of carries, but the offensive line moved the ball, moved people. Like they got pushed. The defensive line didn't get knocked back. They did a good job holding the point. And that's why at one point in the game, I think there was 10 rushes for Michigan for 1 yard. Now, you talk about Jim Knowles being a little too aggressive. He had a plan going in. They're going to pressure JJ McCarthy and force him to throw it, especially with the running backs that were obviously hurt. Donovan Edwards obviously played and had the explosive gains at the end, but Blake Corum was largely ineffective. He wasn't really able to get anything done. So you want to push it back on the quarterback. Problem is you have to make plays. You have to make tackles. You have to cover guys. Now, you can change up a little bit as a defensive coordinator, give your guys some relief, and ideally you'd like to be able to do that, but the players ultimately have to step up and make plays. And there are a lot of guys, not a lot, a number of guys in critical situations, they picked a bad day to have a bad game. It was about execution. It wasn't about toughness. It wasn't about preparedness. I saw this. It wasn't about, game plan. I thought the game plan was fine on both sides. Yeah, you could tweak this and that. It's always nice to play hindsight with different things. But doing what they did, that's exactly how I would have attacked JJ McCarthy, the same way. And I thought it was pretty effective for much of the game. With what Ryan did offensively, yeah, you'd like to get some things going. I know the bubble screens are the torment of many fans, but the one that Emeka drops, yeah, that's a touchdown, or at least 25 yards, 30. I mean, they had it blocked up well. Marvin Harrison Jr. has his first drop of the season. Picked a bad day to have it. Cade Stover dropped a couple balls, missed a couple blocks. Picked a bad day to have a bad day. It wasn't that he wasn't prepared. Picked a bad day to have a bad day. Cam Brown missed a tackle on the edge. Fifth-year senior. Mattered a lot to him. It wasn't due to him being scared of the moment or this or that. Like, he missed a tackle. You got to learn from it. You got to get better on it. Lathan Ransom didn't have his best game. Had some bad, rough angles, playing a lot of middle field safety stuff. Struggled a little bit. Cam Martinez, the double move. Yeah. And there were plays. There were big plays. And so guys pick bad days to have a bad day. And that's the reality of it. CJ, could he have pulled it down and run some? Yeah. Would it make me a little happier if he did that? Yeah. Because I think as you saw JJ McCarthy get involved in the design runs, be able to extend some plays, pull it down when you need to. It's devastating. It's demoralizing to a defense when that happens with your quarterback. So there's obviously that in there. That's a big piece of it. Want to go over some quick notes of the game. Michigan essentially had 4 explosive run plays. Usually explosive runs are categorized. Some people do it differently, 12 yards or plus 15 yards. In the line of scrimmage, they had 4 explosive gains for 191 yards on the ground. That comprised almost all of their rushing yards. A lot of that was Donovan Edwards getting loose. And, one gap. Tommy gets a little heavy on the guard, slides through there. Should have been a little more outside. He's played really well all year long. He's been first team all Big Ten linebacker that we'll get into. Gets a little heavy on the guard. Tries and is pressing probably a little too much. 5 explosive pass plays for 237 yards. That comprises basically all their passing yards. That's 9 plays. Now, you can't just eliminate those. But if you go back and look at it, it was guys who either maybe lost eye control in the sense of Cameron Martinez maybe got themselves in a little bit of bad position. Maybe their footwork was a little rough. Maybe they didn't close on the ball with the right angle. But that was all it. That was it. Like that was the game, those 9 plays. So you've got to find a way. Usually coaches say it all hinges on 4 to 5, maybe 6 plays. This game, it was 9, on the defensive side. And heck, you could have probably given up half of them. You just couldn't give them all up. That's the problem. That's the main issue is you gave all of those plays up. Half of them, you still win. The reality is you had 3 points in the second half, in the last 2 years. Got outscored 28-3 in the second half. And this is an Ohio State team that usually just runs downhill in the second half, and that never happened. They were never able to kind of turn it over and get all that momentum going. 7 penalties for 61 or 71, 6 penalties for 71 yards in the second half. 9 penalties for 91 yards in this game. Last year had 10 penalties in the game. Obviously not great. Third down, another metric. 5 of 16 on offense, gave up 7 of 16 on defense. Lost the third down battle. Lost the turnover battle, 2-0. Talk about this. My keys to the game coming in. And they'll hold true forever. Control the line of scrimmage. So run the ball, stop the run. Did that most of the time. Controlled it really on offense pretty well. Defensively, yeah, did a good job. Let a couple things out. Late. And those, you can't excuse those, but it wasn't a constant bludgeoning for 5 yards, 7 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards, 8 yards, 9 yards, 4 yards, just getting murdered down the field. That didn't happen. Keep J.J. McCarthy in the pocket, like limit the quarterback runs and extending plays. Got to get that done. And then scoring, limit the turnover battle, win the turnover battle, and score in the red zone when you get down there. Like, that's all the stuff. And none of those things were accomplished consistently. And that's a big piece of it. When you had Michigan 10 yards rushing in the first half, I mean, that's a big deal. That's rough. All right. Look at all the penalties, all the stuff I threw up there, but this is an inflection point. I believe in the rivalry. And, we'll get into this a little bit. I got some stuff from Josh Perry, but if you look at the inflection point here, you've got a group of 4th-year seniors who are leaving that have a losing record against Michigan. You have 3rd-year juniors who, some of those guys might leave, who have never beaten them. They're 0-2. Seniors are 1-2. Yeah, you lost the game in there that you probably should have won, or you would have won. Doesn't count. It's not part of it. It's okay. All right. What are you going to do about it? It is what it is. And here's where we're at. So I got some sound from Ryan Day that we're going to listen to. Then we'll get into some other things and throw some stuff up on the board. Then we'll leave this thing on a positive note. So, yeah, we'll start off with this. Some of the breakdowns and stuff on the back end. That's what Ryan said in post game.
And you got to obviously go back and evaluate before you just say something that's probably incorrect because everything's happening so fast. But certainly there were breakdowns in the back end. I mean, that was clear to see. When you do that in a big game, then, you saw what happened. And the margin for error is so tiny. And all of a sudden, the floodgates kind of open up and the game gets out of control. And it should have never happened.
Yeah, you had some breakdowns in the back end. Guys losing eye control. You're missing tackles. And whenever you give up those big plays, I mean, it's tough to come back from that. It's a battle. It's very, very tough, very hard. And you got to be better. You got to be more disciplined with it. Discipline. That's the key. Great players play great against Michigan when you're disciplined. You're doing your job. That's when the units play fantastic because everybody's locked in on where they're supposed to be. Talking about being prepared for the game, how practice this week went.
I thought we had a great week. I thought, like you said, emotionally we came into this thing swinging, but we came up short. So I just got to get my mind wrapped around why that happened today and how in the end we didn't finish this thing the right way.
So, it seemed like they were prepared. Ryan talked about being emotionally ready. Saw, the seniors before the game. I think everybody was amped up. Wanted to get it going. But the reality was, like, you felt like it should have separated a little bit there in the first half. I think Ohio State, you had a chance to go up 2 scores. And you never could really pull away. And in doing that, then there's just that uneasy feeling, that nervous energy in the shoe. I've talked to some of the guys on the defense, like, get people excited, get them cheering, pump the crowd. Like, that means they got to know that you're in it. Everybody's in it together. And get them pulling a little bit. Because if not, if there's not that cheering, you just get that nervous energy. And that was not great. And that was not great. But I felt like the guys were emotionally ready. Ryan said that. I thought that was true. They just, came up short. Ryan talking about, going for it on 4th down, the decision to do some of that, those different things.
It all goes into the game. When you feel like you're playing good defense, you feel like you're playing the ball control game, and you can go back and forth a little bit. When you feel like you're giving up some ground, then you feel like you got to catch up quickly and try to get it back a little bit faster, because the game's getting away from you. So, all those things go into your mind while you're in the game.
So, when you feel like the game's going back and forth and defensively you're playing pretty well, maybe you're not as aggressive on 4th down. However, one of the things that we did see, look, that there was a fake punt that was on, and Mitch Rossi would have picked up a 1st down and probably a touchdown. And unfortunately, when you have a backup snapper in who hasn't played most of the season, instead of getting the call and snapping it to the up back, you snap it back to the punter. And my goodness, it was a great catch by him. But as I watched that live, I was like, my goodness, it seemed like they didn't have that communicated very well. Well, it wasn't communicated very well because it wasn't supposed to be a punt. And so it was amazing. It was an act of God that he was able to get that off without any blocking. So that was another miscue, but Ryan was prepared to go for it. People were upset, like, why wouldn't you just have CJ go for it? The Heisman Trophy candidate, because you thought you had a look that you could get it with. They had that look. They didn't execute because the guy snapped it to the wrong person. I mean, that's it. End point. Stop. Play was called well. It was blocked up well. You can watch it over and over again. Mitch Rossi probably hits his head on the goalpost, and that probably changes the course of that game. But they didn't execute it. Execution. It wasn't being out toughed. This game was about execution in the biggest moments. And then it were kind of Ryan's overall thoughts on the game.
When you looked at the first half, physically, we were playing really well up front, especially on defense. I'm not sure how many yards they had, in the first half running the ball, and then they had those 2 long plays, and then in the second half it was more of the same. Too many big plays. That's really, when you look at the game. I don't have the stats in front of me, but it was just way too many big plays. And on offense, we had too many penalties, and it got us off schedule, and we just didn't do a good job converting on 3rd down. And you combine all these things together, and then it gets out of the hand at the end because we're probably throwing the ball too much.
You start out good in the first half, so give a couple of big plays, and then have way too many penalties. You're not good on 3rd down. stuff that I said there. I mean, it's not rocket science. Lost on third down, lost turnovers, penalties, bad. Like, you're going to have a hard time winning a football game. Ryan understands that. You don't have to be a genius to figure that stuff out. And that's kind of the reality of how the game went. Some other things, like the tackling. You talk about the big plays, the tackling. Some angles by Lathan Ransom. Cam Brown on the edge. When I saw that play, I thought Sean Springs in my head. Ohio State's playing well. Defensively, they're doing some good things. And I closed my eyes. I'm like, oh, gosh. Reminds me of 96. I was young lad. It's 9-0. You're dominating the game. You're not getting touchdowns. You're only getting field goals. And then that one play, boom, all of a sudden it's 9-7. Sean Springs, one of the best corners in Ohio State history. Played like 14 years in the NFL. Elite player. Bad crap happens sometimes. Unfortunately, that's where it was. It was a bad time to have a bad day to have a bad day. The gap fits late, like you talked about, fitting up on the run. Tommy Eichenberg got a little thick on the guard. Didn't get outside enough. Ball squirts through there. Little tiny seam. But when you have everybody pressed up to try to get stops, you don't have levels to your defense then. So if it squirts through, you're in trouble. Then like the double moves on Cam, like eye control, good position. And maybe that's another thing where we're playing pretty well. They're not running the football that well. Like, we can back off. We can play a little zone, get some eyes back, help our guys. That's something that could be done. And so those aren't like crazy things that need to be solved. They're things that, can be solved and, they can be taken care of. Throw this up here. Because Josh Perry, I respect a lot. So we'll throw this guy up with Josh. So I love my alma mater. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but this is an inflection point in the game. There are 3-year players leaving who have never beaten Michigan. There are 4 years playing who are 1-2 without a 2000 game. Wild to think that, considering what the last 20 years have been. So I think Josh is accurate in saying that. Got to be a little soul searching. People got to figure things out. You got to find an answer. Maybe you get another opportunity. Who knows? I'll throw this up here too. My guy, J-Book, breaking some things down. 20 penalties in the last 2 weeks. You got headbutting, the G. Scott situation, getting it to 1st and 35. Combining with, I think, a 16, 17-yard run. You get a hold and then a personal foul, and it brings you back, kills all momentum. You get close. That's where you're going to have the fake punt that you can't execute that well. It's an issue. Some dropped passes, unsportsmanlike conduct, blown back end coverages, snapper not executing the fake, DNs losing the edge. LB's had some key, like I said, Tommy got a little thick. They had some issues there. Pre-snap alignments, a quarterback like CJ could have taken, 10, 15 yards on some of those runs. It has nothing to do with toughness. It just had to do with execution. I say it's hammered the toughness all year. Last year, toughness problem. This year, execution problem. And then Jake Budd, who played at Michigan, who I do respect and work with him on some XM radio stuff. I'm going to throw this up. He said, for OSU, the challenge is to make calculated and not emotional changes. A few years ago, could have done the same, or could have made emotional change and didn't. So they stay with Jim Harbaugh. People are talking about firing Ryan Day. It's ludicrous. The guy's lost 5 games in his career. 2 to Michigan, Clemson, Alabama, and Oregon. And we're talking about elite blue blood programs. And some of those games are pretty darn close. How do you get better? How do you win some of those games? The Bama game, outmatched. Tough. The Clemson game the one year, got some bad calls. Played well enough to win. A little bit of execution in the red zone. Oregon defense, we saw that in the last 2 Michigan games. Toughness one year, execution the next. It's not crazy to see. All those problems are fixable and solvable should they choose to be solved. Some good news here for the Ohio State defense. They released some of the All Big Ten. Throw this up first, the first team. You got Tommy Eichenberg, Zach Harrison, JT Tuimoloau. Incredibly happy for Tommy. Had an unbelievable year after was just beaten up last year. Too slow, can't do this, soft, all these things. Tommy had a great season. Should be a finalist for the Buckets. I don't know how he's not. Absolutely crazy. Awesome to see that for Zach Harrison, a guy who came in with so much hype, a little bit unfulfilled, until this year, and he really turned it on at the end. And Zach's been working at it, man. And you can see that payoff. And then JT, I mean, his monster game against Penn State, it was going to be hard to get by that. Nobody on the second team. Throw up the third team. Ronnie Hickman and Michael Hall Jr. You'd like to have seen Mike Hall play more down the stretch. Started the season off so fast, battling some stuff, a little bit injury stuff, but you know what? Huge things in his future. And then Ronnie Hickman is his last season as a Buckeye. It's his last game in the shoe. He's been good, physical tackler. He's been a strong presence on that defensive back end, getting it done. And then we've got some honorable mention as well that we will throw up. Throw this up here. Denzel Burke, you know, he did some good things. He had some struggles this year. Jack Sawyer made some huge plays, continuing to develop. Going to be a really good player. Lathan Ransom didn't even start the season as a starter. Came in after Proctor was benched against Notre Dame. Played well the rest of the year. Not his best game. Great young man. Studies, prepared. Picked a bad day to have a bad day. Steel Chambers, light years ahead of where he was last year. Continuing to play good ball. Hopefully him and Tommy both come back because I think they can get even better. Be really good. And then Tanner McAllister, the transfer that came in from Okie State. And I thought it was a big piece of that defense, helping solidify it, get everybody settled down and settled in. I thought that was really important. All the contributions that he gave Buckeye Nation. So I'm going to put a little bow on that. You know, the Michigan. We'll get to the first team offense and stuff, the offense later, but put a little bow on that with the Michigan game because that's done. It's buried. You watch it, you learn from it. Better angles here, better tackling there. Maybe lean into CJ, maybe take some of this free access running that we can get. You know, and Ryan will evaluate his play calling and some of that stuff. I think Ryan's a pretty good play caller. Like, I'm not ready to just strip all that stuff away. I think he's done a great job here. He's fine. The guy's lost 5 games in 4 years. You have a meltdown next year, we'll talk, but that ain't going to happen. Ryan's too good of a coach. And so here's the thing. The hope. Hope is dangerous. No one wanted to play in the playoff Sunday after the game or Monday after the game. Put up a poll for the radio shows. Who wants to play in the if Ohio State can somehow manage to get into the playoff? Is 50-50 yes and no. Another day goes by. Things start to heal a little bit. And I bring up this. Alabama's won 2 national championships without winning their division in the SEC. And Georgia didn't win the SEC last year and still won it. You want to beat Michigan. You want to win your conference. You want to win your division as well. But if you get in the tournament, anything can happen. And this team's good. And I believe if they get some of the stuff corrected, could they let the squeak in? Yeah. Could they beat Georgia? It'll be tough. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And I don't think they'll get blown out. I think these guys are stung a little bit from what happened. And hopefully if they internalize it and utilize it right, it'll be good. But everybody was waiting for the CFP rankings. Georgia, Michigan, TCU, USC. Who would be at 5? Tennessee's 2-loss team. They're sitting at 7. LSU lost their 3rd game. They're back in the pack. And then who is at 5? Bama or Ohio State? Bama at 6. Ohio State at 5. And probably pretty firmly at 5. And so now they just need some help. And we'll get into it, we're going into the weekend. They just need some help. Can Utah beat USC again? Could Kansas State beat TCU? Both of these games are about field goal lines. They're not 4 touchdown underdogs. They're not 20-point underdogs or even 10. They're right there in the margin of error. And you might need TCU to get beat by Kansas State by 10 points to really move it. But the USC thing is real. And that's going to be Friday night, and so we'll know. Kansas State is going to be noon on Saturday. TCU. We'll find out. There have been teams that have won national championships without winning their conference. Bama twice, Georgia once. They don't put asterisks by those banners. So now, what can you do moving forward? And my man J-Book put out a poll of guys wanting to play in that. And absolutely, there were 90% of the people, I believe, in his poll of 8,000-9,000 on Twitter that wanted to go to the playoff if they can get in. Not, we're going to go and get smashed. So, sunrises in football. It's never as bad as it seems. It's never as good as it seems. Somewhere in the middle, reality lies. Understand why it happened and what you can do to correct it. Those are the morals that sports is supposed to teach us. And then and you know what? scraping yourself off the mat and going and battling again and not being afraid that the same thing is going to happen. Learn from your mistakes, focus up, and proceed more intelligently the next time. That's what it is. That's all it is. If you have the right type of people, then you can get that done. And I believe this Buckeye team has the right type of guys. A lot of guys who really wanted to win and probably wanted to win so bad that it ultimately worked to their detriment. But I like a good redemption story, and I believe that there's one in store. Man of faith, you got to believe. Thanks for tuning into this edition of Carps Corner at the Bobby Carpenter Show coming at you. I appreciate all the support, everything. Hopefully we'll be having some more college football playoff stuff to talk about with the Buckeyes. And appreciate you watching, and we'll talk soon.